Hello, everybody, and welcome to our market update for the 16th of February 2026. I hope you had a wonderful long weekend. Back to business tomorrow, and to get ready for said business, let's see where we ended the week and where we want to start, or where I expect we will go this week. Start with the NASDAQ as we always do. I mentioned to you on the Wednesday session that or Wednesday market update that I did. I'm less optimistic uh, today that we're going to reach all-time highs before we test the lows of this ribbon here at 582 or so. And my opinion hasn't changed a whole lot, except for one thing. And that is that on Friday, that would be the 20th, pardon me, the 20th of February, it's expected that the Supreme Court is going to release their decision on tariffs. Now, what I find interesting about that timing is if you look at your options calendar, it is monthly OpEx on that Friday. So I don't think it's a coincidence that because that decision is expected to move the markets. Now, how does it move the market is a much more interesting discussion that we should have. So I'm going to take a moment and I'll tell you what my thoughts are. With the way the NASDAQ has been moving and generally the way the markets have been cooling down a bit, if we get a situation where the Supreme Court says these tariffs were illegal, for lack of a better word, and that we have to, or that the administration has to now provide refunds to US companies that paid those tariffs, and currently on PolyMarket, and I rely on this because I feel that a lot of people who are wagering on PolyMarket, and this is a very active contract, about $4.5 million wagered, still down at 26%, that the tariffs will stand. So that means 74% chance that the Supreme Court rules against tariffs. If they do, what happens with these tariffs that a lot of the US companies have paid? So we talk a lot about liquidity in these markets, and that liquidity really drives what's happening in the equities market. And injecting $150 billion approximately, which is what the number is for tariffs that have been collected from US companies, or I'm sorry, tariffs that US companies have paid to import products that they're reselling here. That $150 billion that we're giving to companies provides this amazing injection of liquidity. And that, when I think about what's happening with things like Walmart, Target, etc., retailers, part of what I think is happening is that when this injection of liquidity happens, there's all kinds of the market is awash with extra cash. People are spending money on all kinds of things. That's one side of it. So that the liquidity injection, I think, moves the market higher. Currently, S&P, if we go to SPX, pinned at around 7,000, just about. And you can see we get up to 7,000, we come right back. Get up to 7,000, 7,000, we come right back. I think if we get this injection of liquidity, or if the ruling is that there will be that injection of liquidity, I think we do somehow break past that 7,000 barrier. However, the other side of it is now there's uncertainty in the markets. And as we all know, the market does not like uncertainty. So this push and pull of increased liquidity, if the decision goes that way, but the increased uncertainty present a really interesting situation. And as I mentioned, I find it intriguing that this is happening on an OpEx Friday. So I want to keep an eye on that. I think if going back to the Qs, if the liquidity argument wins out, which I think it will, if that happens, then I'm going to look at whether we can overcome this level of 614, but below that 584 on SPX. I'm looking to see if we can break above that 7,000 mark. And we've tested it, like I said, a few times. We got close middle of January, end of January, last week. So that's where I think the market is waiting for a decision on that, and that will dictate what I'm going to be doing this week and more likely next week when the decision is out. Now, if there's all kinds of interesting action in the market one way or the other, I want to see that because as we've seen with a lot of these decisions in the past, somehow the news gets out. Now the Supreme Court decisions have actually been quite good. That news is a little bit more challenging, but we have seen that in the past for that news to be leaked out early. Okay, so back to the NASDAQ. I'm using going back and forth between two chart patterns, excuse me, two templates here. This is velocity with the reentries. This is victory 3. So going back to the cues, let's recap. Right now, as things stand, I'm I'm of the opinion that we're more likely to test this 583 level than we are to test these all-time high levels at 636. But I want to see how the week goes. SPY, we looked at SPX, SPY, very, very similar. You can see we've got those all-time highs, and now we're coming back and testing that ATR level. If we can find support here, that'll be a little bit more encouraging. But if we can't find support there, then I want to see if we can break down to this level here at 652. IWM, which was a star last month, has really now pulled back. It's tested that ATR level. I believe it broke below. Yes, there's the exit on the add-on. And then we have the re-entry on the 9th of Feb. And now kind of just dawdling along here and seeing if it wants to break the all-time high or get below the support level of 256. So nothing for me to do on the Russell. Going over to gold and silver. Now these were trading over the last 24 hours or so. And I do like this move on gold. I like it holding this support level here, 5,013 currently where we are, as we have started a new day, or it just rolls kind of into the next day here. So a day and an hour left on this particular bar. For me, line in the sand, 48.03. So this one, a little easier for me to say. This one, I do think we've taken a bit of a breather here, which I think is great. I think it's healthy for the market here to take a bit of a breather after we've had this kind of move over the last, what is it, 6, 7 months or so. So I think this is good. I want to see it find support and hold support at 4,800 and then head back a little higher. Silver, as Richard was insightfully pointing out, the markets in China are closed all week for Lunar New Year. So a lot of the action will be on COMEX. And as I've mentioned before, COMEX a little bit easier to manipulate than the cash price of silver, but it's been holding steady. I don't like the fact that it's below my trend level on the ATR. So right now it's still bearish for me. If we can break above, which is at 94, 95, excuse me, then I'll be more interested in longs. I'm still holding my PSLV position. I haven't done anything with that. And I'm still holding my SLV position, which is a caller. And the caller is at 70, it's at a 75 put, 100 call for January of this year. So it's a longer term hold for me. I do still believe in the longer term prospects of silver. If it ends up breaking down, the collar is very well protected, so I don't expect to have a big loss there. Going over to the bonds. So TLT, I find this move over the last couple of days really, really intriguing. And this move above the ribbon, and it looks like, and I've been waiting for this move on TLT for quite some time. I think there's going to be volatility here in the bonds. This is the 20-year, or this is the ETF that tracks the 20-year. So this move here, now this is it's a slow mover, but what I would do here is when it breaks a previous pivot high, so the previous pivot high above the ribbon comes in around 90, what likely will happen here is that we will establish a new pivot high in this series post Feb 12th. And when that happens, I'm going to consider a long position here. Here, it's from 89.72 to 87.84. It's $2, which is what, about 3%, not even 2.5%. It's not a bad trade to for me to take, but I want to be sure that this is not just going to pull back, regress a little bit back to the ATR level and then move up. So, TLT is something I'm keeping an eye on. The one that I really liked on Friday, but I didn't like how expensive the options were, was Nucor here. So I want to show you a couple of things on Nucor. This bar here, so this is the volume, and this is the volume delta. So this is basically the difference between the number of buyers hitting the ask versus the number of sellers hitting the bid. And you can see if we go back, that bar really stands out, as does that bar. This one, not so, but you can see it's generally higher than most of the green bars out there. And when you get a move, which is like this, you're down 3%, but you're getting net buyers and you're finding support at the ATR, which happened on something like FITB. Do you remember this move on FITB? So this was not exactly the same chart pattern, but you can see we found support at the ATR and then a very significant net volume delta. And this is the trade that I'd mentioned on that following Monday on the 2nd of Feb. And you can see it kind of took off from there. So Nucor to me looks very, very similar. And the other reason I like it here is that barring a gap, what's my risk here? Especially if I'm doing this with an option strategy where I define my risk at the very beginning. Closing price on Nucor, 183.23. Stop loss level would be at 179.34. So it's about $4 on a $183 stock, which is about 2%, a little bit more than 2%. And as I was saying to Shri, who I was one of our members I was speaking with this afternoon, said, the market for me has changed, especially over the last 5 years. I'm no longer just looking at longs and shorts. I'm looking at a distribution of probabilities and what my risk level is versus what my potential reward is. And when those things are asymmetric, like they were on FITB, so our entrance there was at 50.22, stop loss comes in at 49.50, it's 70 cents. It's about 1.5%. That is the kind of trade. And combine that with volume that I feel is more convincing than just a typical volume bar and volume delta that's much more convincing than we've seen in more than a year. I've got to go way back. You can see this bar stands out. So for me, this is what I would classify as a 10 out of 10 trade. Nucor, on the other hand, it's there. The volume bar isn't as convincing as it was on FITB or FITB, but I do like the support here. I like the fact that when we did have a sell-off, that the buyers did step in. So why did I not take a position on Nucor? It's just that the spreads were not great. But I'm going to have a second look at this tomorrow and see where we go with it. So this would be my stop loss level here at 170. Let's call it 179 just to be simple. And it's a close below that level, not a move below that level. And this pattern keeps showing up. We go below the ATR, close above the ATR in a strong way. So keep an eye on Nucor. Others that there's nothing really that's been standing out, but still working on that screener, which will make things a little bit more easy in terms of focusing only on the things that have some kind of signal, and we can customize it to be as sensitive as we want. We'll keep an eye on that. We're going to deploy that, excuse me, I'm hoping by the end of the week so that all of you can have access to it as well. I think if we deployed it as is right now, the system may not be able to handle all the requests that the group would be doing, and especially at times like first thing in the morning or when the market opens, when if we're putting out 2,000 requests for signals, there's a good chance that it may not work for anyone. So working on it, and we'll get it out to you as soon as we can. Economic calendar. I told you Friday for me is the big day, and Again, it's option expiry day. So before that, do we have anything? Building permits? I don't think any of these things are going to be moving the markets. Initial jobless claims, maybe on the 19th, and GDP on Friday. But Friday for me is the big day for what I think will be the announcement from the Supreme Court. Okay. Our next market chat comes to you on Wednesday, where we will do a special segment on how to use TradingView and how to get the most out of the tools that are available on TradingView. We hope you can join us for that. In the meantime, we always, always, always wish you profitable trading, the very best of health. We'll see you then.